Natalie Price Representative Price is already scheduled to work on a visions project. So we are working on that. Hello, Senator Moss.
Hi.
Hello. So it's good to see you all. We have some faces that we haven't seen in a little bit, so good to see you again. Today we're kind of going to discuss a few different things that's going on. Since the last time we met, not a lot of new stuff, but we can talk a little bit more about the budget because I know that's a really hot topic right now. I'm Representative Samantha Steckloff, represent the 19th District, which is Northern Farmington Hills, Northern Southfield, Bingham Farms, Beverly Hills, Franklin, the southern part of Bloomfield, and the western part of Birmingham. I serve on only appropriations committee, so I only do budgetary process, and I am the ranking member on Eagle, so it's been a bit of a change, and I'm still serving on your school aid. I am the vice chair of capital outlay, which works on our big projects, university buildings and such, and our full appropriations committee.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
I'm Jeremy Moss, state senator for the area. I don't serve on the appropriations committees. So right now we're going through our budget process. All of those go through the appropriations committees. And so I serve on policy committees, I chair the elections committee, I chair the regulatory affairs committee, I'm on the local government committee, I'm on the economic development committee. But all the action is in appropriations, or it should be in appropriations right now. So we're going through our state budget process. We are aiming, in the Senate at least, we've passed our budget out of the Senate last week in hopes that our House counterparts will also pass their version of the budget. I mean, the budget impacts all of you. The budget impacts school funding, health funding, local government funding, road funding, housing. And so we're trying very hard to get this done by June 30th. That's the law. But the Constitution says we have to get it done by September 30th. Our Speaker of the House, however, said we don't even have to pass a balanced budget at all, which is very wild for, fiscally conservative Republican to say that the budget is not the priority, but nonetheless, here we are. So I certainly want to go through some of the top lines of what we've invested in our budget in the Senate. The House is still in their process. We are pushing them as much as we can.
So are we.
So I'm really just going to read this from our Senate Democrats website. And if you go to senatedems.com, you can either go on your phone now or you can go later. There is they put together a really nice site on our Senate Dems team of everything that's in the budget that we've invested in. What's that?
Can you repeat the site?
Yes, senatedems.com. And I can really just read the top lines about what we've done, but it's user friendly, it's interactive, and it talks about what we're investing in and what are our priorities for our state budget, which includes education, ensuring there's investment in our classrooms, ensuring that we're helping our teachers and parents, government efficiencies, local and state infrastructure, public safety, that's first responders, that's making safer communities, and then lowering costs and investing in people. So we've put more into the classroom. We've had, obviously, our House Republicans pass a school aid budget that slashed $5 billion with a B dollars to our classrooms. We aren't doing that on the Senate side. We're investing in our education systems. We're putting essential funding towards our 28 public community colleges to bolster their operations and improve their infrastructure. And we're ensuring that our department has the resources that it needs to invest in our kids. I'm just reading it through as anybody else could. We're supporting our 15 public universities. The
Republicans put 0
Yep.
in that budget.
We're supporting our judiciary, our government operations, the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. We're supporting clean water infrastructure in our budget, which is essential and important, by putting resources into our Environment and Great Lakes and Energy Department, our Department of Natural Resources, MDOT, And then obviously we're ensuring that communities can be safe by investing in Michigan State Police and other public safety personnel in our communities. And then lastly, ensuring that we can save costs all throughout the process by investing in early childhood education, by investing in workers' opportunities as well. So please use this website. It's actually a really helpful tool of some of the top lines that are in our budget. It's SenateDems.com. And this is just the Senate Democrats' first offering of where our values are and where they align with. So we'd love to see a House Republican or even a bipartisan budget, and I'm sure Rep. Steckloff would as well, but where are you in the process?
Where was I last week? We are, the consensus revenue estimate convention was last week, so.
Explain what that is.
So what it is, it's the time when we come together with leading experts to figure out where our budget really is, truly how much money is in our budget, what is estimated in revenue, in spending, so therefore we can craft our budgets. And Friday, we found out that there's an additional decrease in our general fund dollars of about $360 million. Our school aid revenue since January is up though, very, very small amount, about 2.6%. Our general fund dollars are down by 0.2%. And that's predominantly because when Democrats were in control, we really tried to focus to make sure that we were able to get tax cuts for those who need them. And when I'm talking about tax cuts, I'm talking about the earned income tax credit. I'm talking about the elimination of the pension tax. And because there are so many people that now qualify, that's one of the major reasons the general fund dollars are down. We're also trying to figure out where general fund dollars in being estimated for the future. And the problem is we really can't figure that out just yet because of the federal government. It's very difficult to find out what our revenue is going to be when tariffs are on and off and on and off. So we can't quite get a firm number. So what usually happens is after this May revenue estimating hearing, that is typically when if those lagging behind might be able to get their budgets out. And I say that because Representative Boland, who chairs appropriations, said publicly that now they can begin to work on it. They put out a budget in February that slashed everything. I mean, it absolutely slashed everything. School was down by $5 billion. And I think it was to be able to, they were almost anticipating a government shutdown, so they put whatever they could down as like a fail-safe. And that's pretty bold to indicate to Michiganders that you do not plan to have a budget done on time. So that is what we're dealing with. The chair of appropriations wants a budget, the speaker is like heading in the direction of a shutdown. So there's definitely some odds going on in the House Republican caucus.
Which is crazy. I mean, we have to
Yes.
talk about that. To not have a balanced budget means that if you're a state worker, payroll wouldn't be processed. Essential programs wouldn't be funded. I can only think of twice where a budget wasn't passed from the state by the deadline, and it still passed in the wee hours of the morning of October 1st. And it caused angst and crisis. People didn't know if they should show up to their jobs on October 1st just because they didn't know if their jobs would be funded. So the idea that the Speaker of the House, where really the legislature has some very basic constitutional obligations, very clear in the Constitution, we have to pass a budget. We take your tax dollars, we must reinvest them into services that you utilize. And so for the Speaker of the House to say that he doesn't even know whether or not there should be a budget passed on time is like ridiculous.
Said it better than I could.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we're at with the budget. As you'll see right now, municipalities, school districts right now are working on their budget because they are supposed to begin July 1st. And I can't imagine trying to put together a budget when you have absolutely no idea what you're gonna be receiving from the state.
So we can open it up for budget questions and then just kind of roll into some other things that are going on.
I guess I don't quite understand it. The Senate has a budget, the House has a budget. You
Yeah.
come together then?
In February of every year, it's usually like the launch of budget season, and that's when the governor comes into the full appropriations committee and does this very public hearing, and she releases her executive budget. So that's kind of like the kickoff. And then for about, since maybe end of January to now, this is when we're in committees every week going over where we might need the budget to go. So what's needed, what's not needed. And the Senate at the time is doing the exact same. And then the Senate will craft their own budget, and then the House will craft their own budget. It was designed by, the government was designed on purpose to do this. And so what happens is then that triggers, so the Senate will send their budgets over, we vote no. We send their budgets over, they vote no. And that triggers what we call, yes, conference committees. And that's where the governor, the chairs of the subcommittees get together in one group and hammer out the budget. And it's a lot of work. Someone who was in charge of the higher education and community college budget, we worked very diligently on that. And for the first year we were together, I think we were in deliberately we were in deliberations for about 3 weeks. This year was last year was a much tighter budget time where we only had about a week to get it done. And so those were like 15-hour days just in deliberation. So it's a lot of work to get these budgets put together, but how can we start deliberations when the House hasn't put forth their budget? So it delays the entire process.
So I recognize this is a lot of government speak.
Yeah, a lot of,
This is not a lot of normal people speak. But the idea is we're supposed to pay our bills and we're supposed to pay for programs that you depend upon. And we're supposed to do it by June 30th. And we have half of the government willing to do it, and we have half of the government saying, we don't even know if we have to do it at all. And it's kind of unprecedented, and it's presenting a lot of chaos and challenges.
So it looks like they just following the lead.
Yes.
Everybody, even though they started off on equal footing, right?
Yeah.
This is what you're presented by the governor, and then you go ahead and try to do but the Republicans are being Republicans.
Instability and chaos is no way to run a government with critical lifelines are at stake here. So it's very, very challenging.
and that's infighting in their own caucus.
Yeah, because you got the Republican budget chair in the House saying one thing and the Republican speaker saying another. So we will see how June plays out, but we put together a document from the Senate that we're pretty proud of. Yeah.
So do you think that this chaos between the Republicans is intentional in order to get to the last minute and then maybe whatever's presented will be voted on?
I want to see the best in people, so I want to think it's truly theater, but I have become hopeful only because the chair of appropriations has been working so diligently, and she has come out in public saying we need to close the books of last year if the speaker won't let it happen. She wants to get budgets out right now, and it's the speaker that's stopping it. And so at some point, it's going to come to a collision, and I'm hopeful that that collision happens sooner rather than later, which I think it's on that trajectory.
We can even chat about how unprecedented and challenging this period of time is. I have served in the minority party when the legislature was controlled by all Republicans, Senate and House. I've served in the majority party when the Senate and House was controlled by Democrats. This is my first time in the legislature serving in the majority party in the Senate when the majority party is a different party in the House. So last term, when we got the majority, we came out the gate, we passed hundreds of bills right away, dealing with labor rights and housing and employment, and protecting personal freedoms and gun safety and education. It is May 19th and we've passed 4 bills. The entirety of the start of the year. Now, one of them is mine. So I guess I have a quarter of all the bills that have been signed into law because there have only been 4, which just is very, very slow. And we've had a lot of bipartisan things come out of the Senate that just sit in the House and don't go anywhere. One of the things that we're most proud of is with a bipartisan vote to create a prescription drug accountability board. You know, we've all seen the rising costs of prescription drugs. We wanted to model after other states that have a board of people that are stakeholders in the prescription drug pricing, that if a pharmaceutical company comes and says, I need to increase the cost of this drug by X amount, they gotta justify it. And if there's no market justification, if there's no research and development justification, this board will say no, these costs can't increase. Who's on the side of keeping drug prices higher? I mean, I could tell you who, but we passed it out of the Senate on a bipartisan vote, and it sits in the House awaiting action. We've passed legislation to strengthen our elder abuse and exploitation laws, to expand definitions of different crimes to ensure that our elder and other vulnerable adults populations are protected. This passed bipartisan. Who's in favor of elder abuse? Yet these bills sit in the House unmoved. And instead, I don't know if Rep. Steckloff mentioned it, what are the priorities of the legislature, of the House? Renaming the Gulf of Mexico.
That was last week.
And not just in DC, here in Michigan. Because all of you care so much about what the name of the Gulf of Mexico is. They passed a resolution to rename the Gulf of Mexico. They are passing this week legislation to ban transgender athletes in high school sports. There are literally...
And they're usually using the Elliott Larson Act.
Yeah, there are literally
Yes.
0 transgender athletes in high school sports in Michigan. You have to get a waiver from the Michigan High School Athletic Association in order to do that. And for the spring semester, there have been 0 waivers granted. This came up in the Senate. We were going through like a budget vote, and one of our Republican colleagues put up an amendment that, I don't know if it would either defund schools or just ban schools from having transgender athletes. Again, of which there are 0. And I said, I don't think crocodiles should be barbers, but I don't put it in a budget amendment that somehow we have to ban crocodiles from being barbers, because there are 0 crocodiles in the state of Michigan that are barbers right now. I mean, we're trying to solve real problems, and they are literally waging the entirety of the House on these fictional issues like the Gulf of Mexico or the 0 transgender athletes that are in schools right now. So it's wild, it's crazy. So this is a long answer to your question. I hope that at the end of the day they want to solve problems. I mean, I know they're on this long journey of, fighting all these weird issues, but I hope at the end of the day we can land it so we actually do stuff and fund things and support people. That's kind of my goal. So it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate.
Jeremy's been in the legislature longer than I have, and so he can probably speak a little bit more to this. But the speaker in general, this is not, we're we may disagree on a lot of policy things, but typically the Speaker of the House wants to get stuff done. It's a very different time right now, and I can't emphasize how different and not normal this is.
Yeah, I see some questions in the middle. To put a finer point on this, I served all throughout Rick Snyder's second term, and one of the things he constantly was parading around was we passed a budget on time, 2 years in a row, 4 years in a row, 6 years in a row, 8 years in a row, we've passed a budget on time. So to have a Republican Speaker of the House say, we don't even have to pass a budget at all, is like bananas. Yeah, some questions in the middle.
Well, first question is, it sounds like in Washington, the House is first, get the bill, and then if it passes, it goes to the Senate. But it sounds like you said that the Senate passed these bills and the House is laying down on them, so that's the opposite, isn't it?
Yeah, so the process usually goes, there are Senate bills that make it to the House and there are House bills that make it to the Senate. So they can go both ways. Right now, coming from the Senate perspective, we're the working chamber. We're the ones that are actually doing things. And these bills, again, bipartisan, elder abuse, prescription drug affordability, we've sent over to the House for action, and then they're kind of chasing after these crazy issues like renaming the Gulf of Mexico. So it is unfortunate, and it shouldn't be that way. This is not helping anybody. This is not supporting anybody. So it's very, very frustrating. So yeah, I'm as bewildered as you are on how crazy this is.
Now, you're gonna tell us the bills that, you passed later on.
Yeah, we can get you some bill numbers on that for sure, for sure. I'll look those up while Sam can take other questions.
Like, I don't have much more to add, we haven't
Yeah.
done a whole lot. Yes, in the back.
Yeah, right.
I heard a while. Oh, are you
I'm sorry.
still
We'll
on?
come to you next. We'll go to Greg and we'll come right to you.
A while ago, I heard that Speaker Hall had a road plan. I was wondering if there was an update on that, or
Great question. Road funding is one of my favorite topics to talk about. We've been trying to get a road plan together for a few years now. Currently, we bonded out, which is why all your trunk lines are being worked on. The governor bonded out $3 billion for that a few years ago, about 5 years ago. The money is dried up. We are about $3 billion shy annually on the funding needed to fix our roads. Now, normally this would be a very, very important topic. But with the cuts going on in the federal government, it's very hard to talk about roads when you are seeing Medicaid be completely slashed, when you're seeing all these terrible things. We could possibly lose over 40% of our budget from the federal government. I know I'm going around in circles, but I think it's important to talk about why the road funding plan is so kind of controversial right now. Now, the speaker put together a road funding plan that it's not good. We'll just say it is not good. It is all cuts, no clear kind of out of the box thinking of a way to have an actual sustainable road funding plan. He used the same tactic that they did in 2015 in increasing the gas tax, which is just not sustainable. Every single year we're going to continue to see more electric vehicles on the road, and that's why we talk about sustainable road funding plans. So I am, in a bipartisan fashion, working with the speaker's office to see what sort of plan we can actually move forward that is not an all cuts program. You will hear the governor speak about this over and over again. It is a priority of hers. So let's at least test out and see if we can get to a solution where it's not going to have adverse cuts on our schools or on our hospital system. So it's a lot more difficult than it possibly seems on the surface because we're dealing with such a fragile time right now. But his package didn't make sense at all. The only thing that made sense in there is that they refused. We got an amendment in there. In the House Democrats fought to get this amendment in there, and we made sure that no matter what plan moves forward, there is $100 million dedicated from the corporate income tax that goes towards affordable housing. So at least we got something it's critical for the state.
I want to talk about roads a little bit because this has been a very long conversation here in the state of Michigan. My first year in the legislature was 2015, 10 years ago, and our roads were crumbling, and it was the number one thing I was hearing in my office. Fix the roads, fix the damn roads, even before Gretchen Whitmer started saying it. And we had a public vote, as you might recall, in May of 2015 that failed. It was a tax shift. It was actually making sure that all of the money that we pay at the pump goes to roads, all the taxes that we pay at the pump goes to roads, and it was increasing the sales tax by a penny to offset some of that shift. It failed. And since then, there has not been a serious roads plan. In October of 2015, the legislature did pass a road funding bill that put $1.2 billion into our roads. As you've heard, it's a $3 billion problem. $1.2 billion actually just slows down the deterioration of our road over a longer period of time, doesn't make our roads better. And the plan was twofold. $600 million was raised in raising your registration fees, so you paid for it, and $600 million was futured unspecified budget cuts. If you could tell me what that was, I would like to know. It never happened. It never materialized. So future phantom budget cuts and a registration fee increase on all of you only just made the problem be worse longer. So here we are 10 years later, and we still have a road funding problem here in the state of Michigan. There is no amount of cuts that can solve our road funding problem. And what's going on in the Michigan House of Representatives, it's the speaker's plan is kind of a shell game. It's just shifting money. If we don't raise revenue, we will not be able to solve this problem. Now, I am absolutely not in favor of raising revenue on working people. I think you can do this very targeted in a targeted way to raise the revenue needed to increase either our general fund or just increase dollars that go into roads. One thing that I have been working on with a fellow colleague is a few years ago we created iGaming here in Michigan. We allowed for iGaming. You now see all the Jamie Foxx ads and all the billboards and all of that. That's a new emerging industry in Michigan that we're participating in. I was part of the bill package. It was a Republican-led bill package, but I was one of the Democratic bills on it that created the licensing for this to be allowed in the state of Michigan. There was a prediction that this industry would be about a $30 million a year industry. It is a $300 million a year industry. It's exploded. People are participating. And one thing that I kind of said at the time, and it's true still today, that we missed the boat, is we aren't raising enough revenue from that industry. We kind of gave a sweetheart deal to all of these iGaming folks that are in this industry to participate. Now the industry is 10 times as successful as we predicted it to be. Let's get some of that money into the state to pay for things. Ohio, Republican-led Ohio with a Republican legislature and a Republican governor has raised revenue, raised taxes off of iGaming and is collecting $200 million more a year because of it. Surely we can do that too. So I authored a bill last year to raise the revenue on these iGaming industries, these iGaming companies, so that we can get some more of the exorbitant profits that they're enjoying and put it into basic needs like roads. So it's not a $3 billion solution, but it could be a $200 million part of the solution. So that's kind of we can precisely target and narrow certain sectors of our industry without hurting working people. One of the things that the governor's come up with is she wants to tax Facebook ads. Our tech bros are getting a lot of profits. What if we were able to have a tax on Facebook ads and bring in that revenue as a part of the problem? So Samantha has come up with how many different solutions? 12 different ways.
Gets us to $6 billion
to get to
in new revenue.
$6 billion that you wouldn't really feel as a Michigander, but these very precise ways to raise them could be a part of the solution. To answer the question specifically, the Speaker of the House doesn't want to entertain any of that. He just wants to shift funds around. So we're going to have a $300 billion pothole in the budget, $3 billion pothole in the budget. It's going to affect some other part of your life if we just shift funds rather than figure out what is the stream of revenue that we need to go to roads.
Yeah, so my role in all of this is to bring new revenue to show that we don't need to do an all cuts approach.
Yeah. And we had a question here and we'll come right back.
So initially you stated that you have passed 4 or 5 bills.
Four.
Okay. 4.
It's a shame.
Now, you have to forgive me. I'm coming on the back end of things, and I'm just trying to understand. So, how do you decide which bills that you're going to push?
Yeah, so very good question. So every state lawmaker can introduce 5 bills a month. That's what we're capped at. Is it 5 or 10? 5 bills. 5 bills a month. So, because I've been in the legislature for 10 years, there are some issues that I've been pushing for 10 years and just can't get them past the finish line. So every lawmaker has the ability to introduce 5 bills a month. And really what it comes down to is, I mean, this is a really good question of how the process works. You introduce a bill, and let's say it deals with licensing, some sort of state license, like a barber license. Like maybe we want to give a license to crocodiles to become barbers. That would be a bill that would go to the licensing committee. I chair the licensing committee. It's called the Regulatory Affairs Committee. So I, as committee chair, set my agenda with all the bills that come to me. And if I see that the crocodile barber bill gets a lot of support and there are people who really want this to be done, I'll put it on my agenda. We'll have a committee hearing, we'll vote it out, and it will go before the full Senate. So there's a lot of authority of an individual lawmaker to decide which 5 bills am I going to write this month. There's a lot of authority over committee chairs. Which bills am I going to prioritize and push out of committee? And then there's a lot of authority over Senate leadership to decide, okay, we have all these bills that have now come out of committee, which ones are we going to push? So yeah, I guess the perfect example would be, these elder abuse bills. There are a few legislators that came together and said this is a priority. The committee chair said this is a priority for me to push out. And the leadership of the Senate said, we are going to put this up for a vote. Now in the Senate, that's where policy decisions happen. Let's talk about the politics. In the Senate, we have 37 members, 19 are Democrats, and 18 are Republicans. So if it's a bill that Republicans don't like, we have to have every last Democrat support it, because we don't have the margin to lose even one Democratic vote. So there's some bills that we've been able to get bipartisan support for, and we've been able to get them out of the Senate, but unfortunately there have been a lot of bills that it's been a 19-18 vote all year long. And then that's half the process. Then it goes to the House. And the House could consider those bills. As we mentioned, there are Senate bills that go to the House. There are also House bills that go to the Senate. And they have their process. They send their bills to their committees. Their committee chairs decide what to do with it. And there have been bills that have come out of the House that now sit in the Senate. So of this whole process, only 4 of them have made it past the finish line, where the Senate leadership and in the House, the Democratic Senate leadership in the House, the Republican leadership in the Senate Democratic leadership and the Republican House leadership has come together and said, we all agree on this, we're sending it to the governor, and then the governor can veto these things, but the governor has signed 4 of these bills into law.
Okay. So this is that was like a 2-part question. I'm here on behalf of, we recently started a tenants union with the apartment complex that I'm in. So my question to you is, are you working on any legislation that would address like slumlord behavior or neglectful property management? Because it's constantly decreasing, but my rent has not gone up.
Yeah,
I'm paying more and more and more, and I'm getting less.
So one of my colleagues, Sarah Anthony, who represents Lansing, has been working on kind of a renter's bill of rights. So I don't know that she's fully introduced it yet, but I know that this is a concept that she's been talking about. We have met before. There have been other legislators in the House that have pushed forward renters' rights. And so we have in the Senate what's the title of the committee is Housing and Human Services. So I'm assuming those bills would go before that committee. So some of my colleagues are working on this specific issue. And so they will work it. They will try to get a committee hearing. I don't sit on that committee, but they will try to get it out of committee and then hopefully get it before the full Senate for a vote.
Is there anything that we would be able to do, or how could we keep up with that?
Yeah, so I would suggest, you could always meet with me, but I would also suggest reaching out to Senator Anthony, and we can talk offline, and I can connect with her and find out where she is in that process. And you can certainly meet with the committee chair of the Housing and Human Services Committee. His name is Jeff Irwin. He's the state senator out of Ann Arbor. And you can even just, reach out to him directly anyways to ask, what are some of your affordable housing priorities or renters' rights priorities this term? I think that's a fair question to ask of him.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, good question. Yeah, I think you had a,
Well, it was when you were referring to possible revenue. What about the cannabis industry? Or are they already
you're right.
providing some of that revenue?
No,
Well-
that's another part of the discussion. Maybe I'll let Rep. Steckloff talk about it, because the governor has put this on the table as another option to continue to raise revenue, precisely.
I've been speaking with the governor, I've been speaking with the speaker about this exact thing. So we're taxed at 10% in Michigan. We have room to get up to 37%, where some of the other states are. But when it first passed, let's just say the industry has become very oversaturated. So we're still trying to figure out how much revenue that would truly bring in. I have an estimate of about $120 million. We are gonna need to wait for House Fiscal, because it could be lower, and that 120 is at the highest percentage. Fabulous idea, and it would only be on the recreational side. We wouldn't put it on the medical side. Yeah, but it's definitely a plan I've been working on. Just it may not be as useful as I originally thought. Yeah.
Yeah,
I have a question about licensing,
yeah,
in particular, home license, home healthcare licensing,
yeah.
like in residential areas. Are there any bills, that limit the number of those types of houses in a particular neighborhood or within a certain distance from each other? The reason I'm asking is because I live over in the Washington Village area, which is 9 Mile and Evergreen.
Yep.
And we probably have 20 to 25% of those houses that are state licensed home care, whether it's mental or halfway houses or what have you, and that's a lot.
Yeah,
And the police are, in certain areas, it's either police or ambulance once or twice a week. It's a lot.
these are group homes or similar
Yeah,
to group
group
homes,
homes.
yeah, so we know about this, we've been working with Mayor Seibert to figure out what is the language. There are challenges that we're trying to navigate through. Right now, Pontiac has a city ordinance that the city of Southfield is looking at that limits group homes in a particular neighborhood. Our city attorney is wondering whether or not it's even constitutional, but they're trying to figure that out on the local level. On the state level, it's difficult because there's a gray line, right? It's not necessarily this easy definable line of if adults choose to live together in a group home setting, where do you draw the line of, is it a group home or not? And so we are trying to find that balance. So we've been working with the mayor of Southfield on this issue. It's a very challenging one. It's a very, very challenging one.
Okay, so I have one other question. Isn't there a difference between a group of adults deciding to live together, me and my sisters or me and some friends, versus I'm going to apply to the state for a license
Yep.
to allow adults to live in that home?
Yes.
So that's my question. Isn't there a way to, and granted, yes, they need to live somewhere, fine. But if you're gonna live in a neighborhood, obey the laws, cut your grass.
Yeah.
Don't walk through the neighborhood at all hours of the night.
Yeah.
Stay in I know they need to live somewhere, and I don't care if they live in my neighborhood, but if you live there,
Be a part of the neighborhood.
be a part of the neighborhood, obey
Yeah.
the laws, don't have the police coming every week, and the
Yep.
ambulance coming. Whether it's, whether the ambulance is coming because you have an illness and you're sick, that's different than the police are becoming because you're fighting.
Yeah. We're trying to find a solution here. It feels like it's simple, but there are so many challenges with people's rights to be able to live in a group setting that we're trying to find that balance. So we haven't been able to find the silver bullet on this issue, but it's something we are working on. And I'd love to get your contact information afterward so that we can follow up with you. But this is something, I wish Rep. Hoskins was here.
Me
He had an incident that prevented him from coming here, but his office has been working on this issue and taking the lead as well. So let's follow up, and we can bring you into the fold on what we're trying to do here.
Thanks.
And I'd love to hear more about your experience in the neighborhood having to deal with this. coming back to the housing issue, and I know the person who asked the question had stepped out, but maybe you can relay the message.
Yeah, sure.
Sarah Anthony introduced the tenant empowerment package that were Senate Bills 19 through 22. And these bills were referred to the Committee on Housing and Human Services. So they've been introduced, and I would love to plug you in with Sarah Anthony as she advocates for this. She is backed by The Rent is Too Damn High, which I'm sure you know very well about. And so would love to connect you with her efforts on this and plug you in. All right. Any other questions? We are 15 minutes more if you have any questions. Yeah,
Okay, I'm back to you.
I can't answer political questions here. I wish I could. So you'll have to phrase it in a way that's not political.
Okay. So what happens when you have someone who's a senator? Half a lot, yeah. And they're running for a US office.
Yeah,
What happens to and they're chair of all these different committees.
yeah.
What happens to all that?
Well, so the good news is
when is
that,
supposed to step out of the role of the
Yeah.
senator of Michigan?
yes, so my term goes up until
It's
the
a
end
good
of,
way of phrasing
my
that.
term goes up until the end, my term goes up until the end of 2026. And I will be working every day as your state senator until the end of 2026. I'm term limited, so I was not able to run for another state office anyways. But I chair these committees, and we're still doing work. I'm still your full-time state senator. We've got a lot of things done. Again, I guess a quarter of the bills that have been signed into law are mine, because one of them has been. But yeah, no, we're still working hard. So you'll still be able to get a hold of me, and I'll still be able to advocate.
Plan on staying here,
Yeah.
in case you're wondering.
Yeah.
Plan on having a gavel next term.
Yeah. Yep. Any other questions, or maybe it's just a quiet group tonight? Yeah.
How late is this going on, till 8 o'clock?
Oh no, till 6:30. So it's 6:15 now. Yeah, it's a coffee hour. So we go from 5:30 to 6:30.
Okay, I know you had mentioned the other senator who was spearheading the tenants
Yeah.
housing. And you mentioned for us to contact her in reference to our wonderful events at Carlisle Tower in Southfield. Who would we contact if, besides her, in maybe Southfield? Would it be the building department, the home department of because people are getting sick from the parking area in the basement. Things are coming down. It's really filthy. It's kind of like, it reminds me of a slum landlord in Oakland County. And we have elevators that aren't working. A lady was stuck in the elevator with her baby, 9-month-old baby last weekend.
It was over an hour.
And then the intercom hasn't worked for months, so people cannot even push the intercom button and we, buzz them in. Is there anything on there?
Our packages are being stolen because of this. Amazon, FedEx, UPS are not able to get in the building. So if they're not able to get in the building, then we'll sit them not into the office where they pick the packages. They're not able to get in, they'll sit them outside of the office door, and anybody can come in and grab them.
Well, I
Yeah.
had things stolen
And like I just had 3 packages taken.
yeah. But one thing that's even worse is our garage, that we're paying $25 a month to be in the garage. The door hasn't been fixed in 3 or 4 months, so anybody can walk down there. We're paying money, it's not safe. The door from the garage is open right now because it doesn't lock. It's just.
No one wants to live like that. No one wants to live under those
No, not
circumstances.
pay all this
And you're
money
paying
rent.
for it.
Yeah.
No, that's
Yeah.
horrible. So what we're trying to do, big picture, is change statewide policy. But for your specific issue right now, if I'm not mistaken, we've talked about this, the city of Southfield has a rental inspection program, which you may not feel like is effective, as I'm kind of gathering. But these are really good questions to ask of the city's building department, the city's neighborhood services department. You know, I know some of you have attended city council meetings. I'm curious as to how valuable you found that, or what were some of the outputs of that, maybe you could share. But you know, we're trying to change statewide policy, but it sounds like you have a specific, urgent, you know, tangible issues with your current place, which would really be something on the most local level, the city, to kind of address at the most local level. Could you share more about, I know you've talked to at city council meetings, could you share more about what's been going on there?
Sure, just for context, this is like a brand new tenant union formed in the past 2 months.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's so urgent, it's 10 floors, 170 units, and when we knock on people's doors, they're like, thank God, it's about time. Like, people are really desperate, with how bad the situation is there. And, for your all context, I was here a year ago, with a group of people that weren't in the same building. So this is different, this is a bit more powerful, that we can maybe negotiate with the landlord. But that other group of people went to city council and asked for some local renters' rights at the city level, such as the right to renew your lease, so that you wouldn't be retaliated against for asking for maintenance or for forming a tenant union. That got kind of moved into a subcommittee where they heard us out. The city attorney was working on a report based on how Ann Arbor has done a similar policy, and that subcommittee has not met, to my knowledge,
Okay.
since 2025.
Had they
And-
said that they would send staff out there from? Because you know, we wouldn't have staff from our office to send out there, but had they talked about sending any city employees out there?
I'm gonna say something really honest. Their main response has been like, the tenants are causing issues and there are food banks if it's too expensive.
That's the response from the unit
City
or the
council.
city?
City council.
Oh, wow.
And so, I mean, that's not all of them. That has been the most outspoken people at city council meetings. In private meetings, a couple of them have said, we're gonna do something, we gotta do something about this, but
This is Carlisle? Is that what, okay, I'll follow up with some city folks to see if we can get some action out there.
I'm gonna check with Hoskins as well.
Yeah.
we haven't talked to them about Carlisle Tower.
Okay.
To be,
Okay.
like,
If-
honest, we've been, waiting until we get 50% of the building, and we're almost there, in the association. So the things I'm talking about are from other tenants sharing their
Sure.
stories
Okay,
back
okay.
in September, October,
Got it.
November. So, the association is mostly trying to focus right now on moving the landlord to address issues, and if they don't, then we were planning to engage city council.
Great. All right, we'll give city council a ring in the mayor's office to let them know about these issues, because nobody should have to deal with this, especially if you're paying for it.
From
You shouldn't have to deal with these
bedbugs,
issues.
roaches, gnats in the elevator.
No
I mean,
good.
it's just like it's a third world.
Yeah.
Always.
I've been working with a fellow colleague of mine, Senator Stephanie Chang, to strengthen elevator inspections in apartment complexes. We've been working on legislation over
Yeah,
the
for a
years, we
while.
just haven't been able to get it past the finish line, so this is, you know, it's a very narrow, you know, you got all these issues, but we've been working on elevator inspection legislation. So we can continue to engage you on how that comes out.
As far as your issues, the city of Southfield has a Southfield Solutions app. Have you heard of that? So when you have problems like you guys are having, you can go to the City of Southfield website, to the Southfield Solutions, and list your problem, whatever it is, And then as long as you leave your contact information, they have to get back to you with what they've done about it.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you, City of Southfield, and it's called
It's called Southfield Solutions.
Southfield Solutions.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if you if you haven't contacted the code department for the garage door and those kind of things, make sure you do that as well.
Thank you.
His name is Zach, I can't think of his last name, but his first name is Zach something,
Thank you so much.
the code enforcement guy.
Good. Yeah, any other topics?
Well, same topic.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I understand that it's funny, I have a listing of Southfield apartments, all in Southfield. And it's amazing how 99% of them have a 1-year lease. Now, when I sold my home in Farmington Hills and moved to Southfield, they had 3, 4, and 5-year leases. So that's a way of going up on the rent every year, and, you know, that's just interesting, don't you think?
Yeah.
And also, there was something that they were able to do, and I understand the Realtors Association is part of this mess too, because they try to, oh, landlords, you can do this, landlords, you can do that. But unfortunately, you can have a signed lease, and they can still put something else in the lease. You know, what's up with that?
I don't
heard
think
that.
so they would not be able to
That
add
can't
to
be
a signed
legal.
contract.
Yes, they do.
Not legally.
No, they would not be able to.
They do.
So we could get you some legal resources, because if you've signed a contract, that contract is the contract you signed. They would not be able to add a provision
I
to
think
it
they
afterward.
have a thing in the lease now that says this can be changed at any time.
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah, and so people sign it because they need a place to live, and then it's not real.
yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, no,
thanks
I
for your time.
there's a lot of housing issues, a lot of housing instability, a lot of rising prices. I'm not immune to it either. It's challenging. It's very, very challenging. What we're trying to do is target this specifically with Senator Anthony's tenants' rights legislation, which we'll engage with you. Told you that the Senate bill numbers. We're trying to solve big problems too by allowing for the building of new housing. It's a long-term solution, but more housing units will bring down the cost of housing for everybody else. The governor had this goal, I can't remember the number now, but to build, X amount of new houses throughout Michigan. I was part of legislation that allowed for the creation of workforce housing. I know that missing middle. There's some resources for folks at the low end of the income scale. People at the high end of the income scale are doing just fine, but there's this missing middle of people who, they can find a house at an affordable option, and everybody descends upon it, and then the bidding starts, and then all of a sudden it becomes an unaffordable option. We don't have that workforce middle income housing, and we're trying to use a lot of tools to incentivize the building of new housing. And new housing options reduces these bidding wars, and will also just bring down the price of housing across the state, which has become untenable.
Are you familiar with NACA, N-A-C-A?
What does that stand for?
National Association of something. But let me just say this. You can get in their program, and you don't have to pay closing costs. You don't have to make a down payment.
Good.
Regardless of your credit. And all you have to do is just go to one of their workshops, and it's just fantastic.
Good.
For people who just can't afford that down payment, $100,000 house, 10%, $10,000, But it's a great program. In fact, I went to the meeting the other month. But I can give you that information.
Yeah, that'd be helpful so we can disseminate it out.
Oh, yeah.
I was just
wonderful.
asking Rep. Steckloff, we passed a bill that gave assistance to first-time homebuyers
Yes.
as well. from the state level. I'm not sure
Can't
I
remember
can't remember the
the
details
length.
of that, but that's another resource, to get people past that big hurdle of getting into a home. But yours, obviously, I'm hearing yours are tenant issues, so we'll plug you into the Anthony legislation. Yeah.
You want me
Right.
to give you the numbers?
Yeah. I'll come to you afterwards, and I wanna talk to you afterwards about
Okay.
the group home situation as
Alright.
well. So, yeah. Alright, well, we're approaching time. Our next event is going to be in Bloomfield, at the Bloomfield Library. I have it down for June the 2nd.
Yep.
So, we will be back in Bloomfield at the Bloomfield Library, June 2nd. Alright, I'll have some one-on-one conversations, and we appreciate you coming out. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
You got it, thank you for
Okay,
coming.
Thank you.